Hello, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. And wherever you are in this wide, wonderful, beautiful world that we live in, you are very welcome to the Global Sales Leader podcast. And every time that I run these episodes, I'm really quite specific on who I want to speak to. So I'm really delighted that I stumbled across these guys, Garrett Brown and Colin Coggins, on the Unsold Mindset. Did I say that correctly?
No, but it's like, listen, Coggins is a really important person and he's
It
worth way more
is.
money than me. I have no problem taking.
No, I think you're both really cool. So I look at high performance in the world of modern sales, behavioral change, neuroscience, influence, body language, mastery, personal branding, and other things and tactics to find something slightly different to talk about than the normal just sales, because I think there's lots of different aspects that we all have to think about when we want to get to the very best that we can possibly be in your high performance, and thinking about and feeling about and knowing what goes on in the head. And that's something that we're going to be talking about today. So welcome, Colin. Welcome, Garrett. We can be, I'm so excited. I can never get my words out. So, Colin, I've got a little bit of a synopsis about you, but rather than me talking about you in a really wonderful, positive light, who would like to start on your journey to where you are and how you wrote the book as well? Because I'm fascinated by this, and I was very excited when I listened to your book. Who wants to go first? Garrett.
Colin, why don't you take it today?
Okay, I'll take it today. The short version is that Garrett and I took very awkward paths to get to our converging moment. So Garrett was a lawyer and then transitioned into startups and never anticipated being a salesperson, but was good at it. And then had, every title you can think of in the book all the way up until he met me. I grew up with parents that hated sales and thought that it was like not a real profession. And so, I grew up not wanting to be a salesperson and accidentally being really good at it. And my entire career has been chief commercial officer, chief revenue officer, head of sales, trainer, right? Like I went through all of them in the exact opposite way most people probably do. So Garrett and I both had this very weird inflection point. For me, it was, I was selling fractional ownership, not timeshare.
You say timeshares. It's okay.
Yeah, no, it's okay. We won't hold it against you, Colin.
I was so bad at it. Like I was so bad at it. And then one day I got put on a PIP and they were like, look, like you're going to get fired. And so I just decided that was the day I would dare them to fire me early. So I stopped listening to the coaches. I stopped reading the sales scripts. I stopped asking questions I didn't want to know the answers to. I stopped laughing at jokes that weren't funny. I stopped abiding by the dress code. Like I really just fire me early. I don't care. I'm not going to win. I'm not going to sell anyways. And that was the month I accidentally broke the sales record. Right. So you can see that just as an example, Garrett and I go through our own lives together. And then one day we're sitting in a room and we're at a software security company. Garrett is the CRO at the software security company. I had just gone through an acquisition and a recruiter called me. And I was leading a sales team that was doing entertainment software. So really cool stuff like Drake and Mark Cuban and Taylor Swift. Like I thought I had made it. And this recruiter called me and he said, I know you think that the entertainment industry is sexy. Congratulations on the acquisition. I have something way sexier than entertainment. And I'm like, what? And he's like, software security. And then I get in this room with Garrett and it's like love at first sight because it was immediate. Like we both at almost like the same moment were like, the greatest salespeople on the planet are the opposite of who people think they are.
Yeah.
Right. They're not the most gregarious. They're not the most insightful. They're not the most social. They're not the most attractive, articulate. That's not who people think they are. They're the most self-aware people in the room. They said something, it didn't land. They were able to course correct real time. Right. They knew that they were talking to someone and that person was not listening. They were waiting to speak and they were able to know that in the moment. That's what me and him talked about. And so we just made an agreement. We were like, you know what? We're going to do this our way. And we grew this sales team into essentially what became a very important reason why this company got acquired by Google. After the company got acquired by Google, the weirdest thing happened. Universities started reaching out to us. Like, you wouldn't have expected that. But, you know, in Los Angeles at the moment, like, it wasn't a big SaaS town. So it sort of made waves. And these universities were calling us and they were like, hey, we're not teaching sales. Well, would you teach sales? So we started teaching together at all of these places. And then ultimately USC asked us to do a permanent class. We said yes. Class became wildly successful, probably because of Garrett's hair gel. And
eventually, his haircut, I reckon.
It's moose. It's moose.
Yeah.
That class got really popular, and that's when like the book publishers started coming. And ultimately that landed us a book deal with HarperCollins.
Yeah.
We wrote the book based on the curriculum. We were trying to find out why the greatest salespeople on the planet were great. And then we figured out that all of them aspired to be someone who looked the exact opposite of who everybody thought a great salesperson looked like.
And I think you're absolutely right. And from the stuff that I looked into and the people that I've ever spoken to, engineers make fantastic salespeople because they've got such an interesting mindset, curious and very curious about how to dig into things, and especially about asking questions that a salesperson typical is one of these hyped up things, which is absolutely wrong in this day and age when there's so many critical areas if you're thinking about very large sales processes that are out there. So thinking about mindset behind everything that we do. And Garrett, you're coming from a lawyer, which is also quite that mind behind how you think and feel about a situation. I think you're like an actor in a way, coming across theoretical in putting your cases across. But there's also a lot of stuff going on up there. I'm getting to a question here. I promise you, two different types of styles here, but you're both successful in what you've done. So what do you think it takes to have that critical mindset, that intrinsic motivation to actually go, what is it that I'm doing that I'm hitting the numbers that no one else is doing? What is it specifically that I'm going inside myself and go, these are the things that I'm thinking of?
Yeah, when Colin is talking, and by the way, if that was his short introduction, can you imagine what I have to go through when he does the long introduction?
I might cut him off.
When he was talking about how the greatest salespeople on the planet are not necessarily what you expect them to be, that's a really big part of what we talk about. And an important sort of takeaway from our book and from our class and from the keynotes that we do and everything else that we do is that there's not one right way to do things, especially when it comes to selling. Because we've seen a million times as sales leaders ourselves that, we'll go into companies and try to help them figure out what's wrong. And they've got one great seller in there who's doing amazing things. And they built the entire playbook and script and everything else based on what this person is doing. And yet for some reason, everybody else saying the words that the leading salesperson is doing is not working. And, that started to become a big thread that we wanted to pull. Like, why, if it works for one person, why doesn't it work for another person? And it's because, what Colin thinks is funny is not necessarily what I think. I do not think it's funny to talk about my hair on a podcast being listened to by millions of people. He does. So it's funny when he says it. I tell a joke that Colin thinks is funny, it might land like a lead balloon because it's just not my authentic voice. And so when you're talking about like, what is it? How do you get into that mindset? The first thing we try to do with our students and with the companies that we work with and with the audiences we're in front of, get them to shift the mindset on what selling is.
Yep.
Almost a cliche at this point to say that we sell every day, but anytime that you are trying to inspire somebody to take action, you're selling yourself, you're selling your ideas, you're selling other people's ideas, you're selling products and services. It is a sales conversation. And once people make that shift and then give themselves permission to do it their own way, it becomes very different. So you talk about engineers. We are in front of rooms of engineers a lot these days, especially in the age of AI, where the things that were engineering superpowers are sort of being democratized a little bit with AI. So now all of these people, engineers in really large companies, they need to know how to get their ideas across, and they need to be, their job is very different than it was, say, 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So we're in front of these rooms talking to them about selling, and we're like, a lot of the people in this room are introverts, and being an introvert doesn't seem like the trait of a great salesperson. If you were listing them out, you probably wouldn't say that. But
let me jump in there because there's a study, I'm not sure whether I heard it from you or whether I heard it from somewhere else, but there's no difference between introverts and extroverts in terms of sales ability, because the introvert is very thoughtful and takes their time and listens. And saying that, then I'm an introvert extrovert. So apologies for jumping in there. But I think that's a really critical point.
It really is. And that's where I was going with it, is that we realized that introverts are actually some of the best salespeople that we've ever encountered.
Yeah.
Because now, granted, most salespeople are extroverts, but we started to dig into that, and we think it's really a self-selection bias because there's this expectation. Oh, I'm an introvert, so sales isn't for me. But when you start to see these engineers and these introverted sellers, you realize that, you know, when an introvert speaks, they have something to say, and you're going to lean in and you're going to listen, and all of a sudden that introversion becomes a superpower. So that's just one example that, and because you called it out with the engineers, I wanted to bring up. It's like there's not one right way to do something. So in order to be a great seller, in order to get that mindset shift, give yourself permission to lean into the stuff that makes you you. That ends up being why some of the greats are good, even though they sell completely differently than you might expect.
And I just want to pick up on a point that you said a little bit a while ago, is when you go into organizations, and I do similar sort of things, and everyone looks at the star seller and they go, what is he doing specifically? Let's mimic him. Let's talk like him. And finding out that it doesn't work for them, because it's all about individual style. It's like having a script. I think a script to a certain extent is good. And then you're adding your own elements to it, your own conversation. It took me a while when I first started out in sales, selling photocopies in the city of London. And my God, I found that very hard, mimicking everyone and reading all these sales books going, I got to follow this script and I got to do, and in the end, I just went, but what I wanted to do, and what I always like to think, is take one aspect that you can take in and practice. And if it works for you, then great. If it doesn't work, try something else that might work for your personality style. What about you, Colin?
I'm a Libra and a Scorpio.
Your star sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was listening to what you guys were saying, and I was thinking about the vigour question, and if Garrett was going to kill me for bringing it up, but I'm going to bring it up. I like asking people, do they think they have vigour? Right? Related to what you're related, obviously, and actually related to what we were just talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like, who is actually the greatest salesperson? I like to ask, and just random people, do you think you have vigour? Because it's a really hard question to answer, because people have different definitions of what vigour is. And then B, because everyone has the same answer, even though they have different definitions, which I find fascinating. So, you know, some people think it's passionate, or, you know, some people think vitality, but, you know, the ultimate, once you get to like how they define it, I ask people, do you have vigour? They say yes. And then I go, do you think you're good at the things that you have vigour for? And they say yes. And I go, well, can you grow vigour? And because if you have vigour for something, it means you care about something, or you're curious about something. And in the age of AI, curiosity is the most important skill to hone, to grow. Can you grow curiosity? Because if you can, it doesn't matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert, you are asking questions most people don't, right? Like you care about things that other people don't. So if an introvert has vigour for software security, the questions that they're going to ask about identity access management are way different than the person that has vigour for relationships, human connection. And so when you have, you know, two salespeople, right, and one's trying to follow the other, when they both have vigour for two different things, they're both genuinely curious about two different things. You can't, like, you have vigour for something, you can't act authentic. Literally, by definition, you can't act authentic.
Oh, that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm trying to act authentic lately.
I get it. This is new vintage. It's not even real vintage. It just looks vintage. I can make fun of myself. I don't need Garrett to do it.
Yeah, I do that as well. I just want to jump in there. When we start to think about vigour, I always find the best salespeople have their own self buy-in, and maybe that's the growth head or growth mindset, but you have to buy into things that work well. But you also have to buy in to go, like, I appreciate where I am, and I appreciate what I do, and I buy into that. I want to succeed, and I want to make a big difference into other people's lives. Because once you have that, I want to make a difference to other people, and I want to help them. And you see it from their point of view, and rather than me, because it's not about us when we're selling. We have to authentically see perspectives from other people. That's where these two things on our head work really well. And me having tinnitus makes me have to work doubly as hard to listen in.
You're talking about the difference between purpose and goals when it comes down to it. And that was what we found. We went on this mission talking to great salespeople, asking them about their goals. How do they achieve their goals? But they didn't want to talk about it. because it was so much bigger than a transactional thing where like you achieved it. Like we would have people tell us, sure, you want to talk about goals? How about this? When was the last time you didn't hit a goal? Like, how did you act? Did you act unnaturally? When was the last time you hit a goal and then you thought to yourself, damn, I thought this was going to feel different? So like, honestly, like it wasn't until they started talking about their purpose, most of the time we didn't even have to ask them. It's like part of their repertoire, right? Like this idea you're talking about, like they're bought in to making an impact, right? They're bought in at a different level. Yep. It's just because they see their purpose in the customers they're serving. They see their purpose in the teammates that are reporting into them. And you know, you move differently when you know like what you're doing is moving your purpose forward. And like unfortunately, a lot of sellers are very goal oriented, and it's that revolving door. And then you're like, how do those special ones, like, damn, like why, what's the magnetic energy? Why every time they're inside the room, everyone gravitates towards them, but they're not an extrovert? Yep. Like, it's just because real recognizes real, right? Purpose-driven people recognize purpose-driven people, and you see your purpose in people.
But there's some natural state that they bring in, because as you say, according to Joe Navarro, in a blink of an eye, you either like someone or there's something, I don't know, there's something not right there. So bringing your right self into a conversation with your clients or your customers and making that presence that you really care for them, you're having that self buy-in to yourself, and you're having that right attitude that you hear, but you're also having a really good organic conversation rather than that scripted, I've got 10 questions that I need to ask and I need to ask them, but let's listen to what you have to say first and then build it out from there.
Yeah, when we're teaching our USC students, we tell them often that the greatest sellers on the planet just care differently. They figure out a way to care more, whether it's about the customer or the problem they're solving or the product that they represent. You know, there's a lot of different things they care about, but they care differently. And so one of the ways that they do that, like Colin said, is by identifying their purpose and figuring out how they can see their purpose in others. Another way, you know, you read the book, we have a whole chapter about falling in love in the book. And, you know, we love to talk about this in front of audiences too, because as soon as they hear it, you know, you see some people start rolling their eyes and go, oh, these guys are going to tell us to fall in love with our customers and blah, blah, blah. But it's not that. It's, you know, how different you sound in a conversation with somebody that you genuinely care about, that you're excited to learn more about, that you're excited to help and make an impact on, versus that list of 10 customers that you have to talk to during the day. And you've already had 8 conversations and now you're going into conversation number 9. You sound differently when you genuinely care about somebody. And so a lot of what we talk about, the reason our class is sales mindset for entrepreneurs, is because we talk about how do you get into that state? How do you care differently? How do you grow curiosity? How do you ask questions that nobody else is asking? And so when it comes to falling in love, you know, we twisted the old, a lot of people probably listening remember the old 3x3 exercise that sales trainers would tell you to do, where before a sales call, you go and spend 3 minutes doing some research on the person you're going to talk to just find things that you can use in the call. You know, when we were selling software security, since that keeps coming up, it might be that the person you're talking to, there was a data breach in their company a while back, and you can reference that. And that's fine. Research is obviously important before any sort of sales conversation, but we don't love that because the subtext there is that you're looking for things that you can leverage or use in the conversation. And that creates that adversarial, you know, salesperson has to win and the lose mindset. And so we tell our students or companies that we work with, we say, spend that 3 minutes doing your research. But instead of looking for 3 things to leverage in the conversation, look for 3 things that you could love about the person you're going to talk to. You know, go on their LinkedIn, and if they're involved in a charity that you're also passionate about, great. That's one thing.
Absolutely.
They have an interesting career arc, great. That's another thing. And it doesn't matter if it's big or small, but we find that when salespeople do that, when they just go through that simple exercise of, why am I going to like this person that I'm about to talk to? What is it that I'm excited to learn more about? You just sound different. You sound like somebody who's excited to have a conversation and not somebody who's going through the motion or reading that script or just saying the things that they're supposed to say. It's really simple things like that can shift a mindset completely and make an average seller into a high performer really, really quickly.
It's on the baseline level of that. It's human connection. It is real big human connection, and curious about them and their lives. Like, because I'm in Ireland, we talk about the weather a lot, and UK, we talk about the number one thing that we bring up, rather than being in California. Yeah, it's sunny again, but maybe you can make, if it does rain, then you can talk about the weather. But that's the number one icebreaker that we talk about. And then we have a little bit of a joke about it. And then we build it into something else, something organic, something that's relatable, because we know that people like themselves, and there's a direct curiosity connection, because I think there's a lot of neuroscience about the frontal lobe and the mirror neurons. It's relatability. The more you can relate to other people, then they're going to hopefully relate back to you, and which brings in a little bit more about that drive. So when you spoke about purpose, because I'm always really keen on purpose and drive, how do you help other people find their purpose? I'm curious about that.
There's a purpose statement exercise in the book.
Well, remind us what it is.
No, but I want to go back to what you just said, because you touched on something that was really interesting that I personally find fascinating, which is that people like buying from people like themselves.
Yep.
And so often, most of us in some capacity are not selling to people that look like us or believe in the same things that we believe in or like the same things that we like. So if people like buying from people like themselves, but you're selling to someone that does not look like you, proverbial, right? Then like, how do you get someone to see themselves in you? Because that is the question. Like the greatest sellers on the planet, right? Like regardless of what their title is, they do such a good job of making sure that the people that they are talking to see themselves in you. And like vice versa, you see yourself in them. And so like when you think about this, well, how do I get someone to see themselves in me if people like buying from people like themselves? The only thing we all have in common is imperfection.
Yep.
So like, wow, most salespeople are trying to be perfect.
Yep.
They're actually totally screwing themselves up, because the greatest sellers on the planet are faster than most at showing you they're imperfect immediately, so that the other person goes, they're imperfect just like me. Like there's this permission. You'll see it like in the book, but you know people like this. Like, why do some people give themselves permission to show parts of themselves? Most of us have been taught to hide since the inception of our careers. That, right? Like how that represents itself is the magic sauce. The minute you do that, then you start asking questions. Because I say fascinating a lot because I'm looking for fascination, right? Like I get to talk to you. I get to listen for the things that I love. We talk a lot about question asking. Like if the greatest sellers on the planet are remembered for their questions and not their statements, why are they asking better questions than most people? Why? Like, you know what it looks like. You ask someone a question they have never heard before. They will ideate for the first time in real time on that answer. And whatever that answer is, that's their answer. They own that answer. You didn't sell them anything. They bought it, right? Like that's that sense of agency. We got like salespeople are always extracting value. Like tell me, give me, where, when, how. That's part of the job, right? But that's taking value. Take. And you got these rare breed of individuals who have figured out a way to add value by asking questions. And you can't get there unless you don't go down that vulnerability track. And that goes right back to what you said, which is people like buying from people like themselves. Go to the common denominator. Yeah.
And I jump in there because I believe that vulnerability is great. And as we strive for perfection, and I don't think we'd ever get to perfection, apart from me, I'm obviously perfect, right?
Yes, please.
That goes without saying, but none of us are. And like I ran a workshop in London last week and I was sick, really sick, and I was sweating. And I had problems communicating, and I was doing this scale of 1 to 10. Said, where are you in communicating? Said, look, I'm about -1 at the moment because I'm struggling big time here. And I was sick, and I kept saying, look, I'm doing my best to actually make, and I showed my true self on there. And I'm not perfect. And I definitely didn't feel that perfect that day because I was putting loads of paracetamol in and Lemsits and other things like that just to stay energized, because I want to portray energized, but also expertise in an area. But I was going a little bit off track, but that built in that human connection even more. So because I'm not perfect and I'm running nose and blow my nose and all of that sort of stuff, I mean, not perfect. And I know I've seen some really good LinkedIn posts like that of imperfection. And they get the better traction because it's the human side and the narrative behind that. So, Garrett, jumping into yourself there.
Yeah, and especially in the age of AI, where there's a lot of content out there that very obviously was not written by a human. Some of it's not so obvious, and we get that. But I think Colin and I talk about this a lot. We genuinely believe that there's going to be a premium on human connection in the coming years.
Agree. I totally agree.
And so, we're talking about vulnerability and how do you show these imperfections as quickly as possible. One of the concepts that we write and teach about, we call it showing your work. Like, you remember, a lot of people remember in high school math class, you didn't just get credit for showing the answer to the equation. You had to show the steps that you gave to get there, that you took to get there. People give credit for that in real life too. Everybody expects that a great salesperson has to have all the answers and not make any mistakes and know all the details about a product. But we find that if you show your work and let people, hey, this makes me uncomfortable, I don't really know anything about this, that buyers, that people that you're speaking to, they feel that connection because they're imperfect too. They get it. Like they've been in that position before. So there's a lot of ways that manifests, Colin. I don't know how, we can talk about a couple of them, but really just being not being perfect is a huge, if you give yourself permission to not be perfect, you're already going to be a better salesperson.
Garrett was alluding to what we saw during COVID, which was a bunch of non-performers that were not doing well. They were on the PIP list and they were thriving during lockdown. They went from underperforming to overperforming. And it was like, it obviously wasn't COVID. It wasn't the vaccine, right? Like what happened? Why are they so good all of a sudden? And it was one reason, because they knew that the person on the other side of the Zoom was struggling the same exact moment, right? They knew they were living in a shared experience. So we would watch this tape and we would just laugh. It was so obvious. Like they'd get on the call and they'd be like, hey, I just want to apologize. I'm probably not in the best form. I'm normally a lot better. That's my 3-year-old that just ran behind me. And that's my wife chasing her because we got to put a adult mask on the baby mask because Amazon's not bringing the baby mask anymore. Don't ask me about toilet paper. Anyways, I just want to call out the elephant in the room. I don't even know if we should be having this conversation. I'm just happy that you showed up. And you would just watch these people just open up. They'd be like, oh, I'm so happy you said that. This is my first pandemic too. I haven't met any of my coworkers. I just got hired last week. And then, the magic moment is at some point they're kibitzing, they're going back and forth. And it's the prospect that goes, well, let's just talk about why we're actually here so that we don't lose the jobs we're complaining about. Right? Like the hierarchy. You've never seen you've never seen a seller and a prospect become get on the same team quicker than during COVID. And anyone that we ever met that has the superpower of selling, like it's better than most, it's a microcosm of that. They know we're all living in a shared experience.
Yeah.
And so they treat the person that they're talking to like they're going through the same thing. Because in some capacity, if they know you're imperfect, like we interviewed venture guys and they were like, we turn down deals when they're too good to be true. Because nothing's perfect.
But it's also to relate that to your client as well, in a way that, look, we tried lots of different things and some of it just didn't work. But what we did do is we listened to our customers in a better way and we found out a better route to market. Like, we're not perfect. I tell you what we are good at. We're very good at listening to our clients and getting some really good feedback so we can make the product and service better. Every product and service out there is not perfect. But we're quite transparent with that because we want to make sure that we grow and we grow together with our customers as well. So you do that. Talking about AI there, I just wrote something down. AI's authentic integrity, a different spin. And that's how we should be using AI in a slightly different way.
Makes sense to us.
So question. I've got a question for you. If you were interviewing you, what sort of question would you ask you? And that's to both of you. 2 separate questions. Asking separately.
So you want us to do your job for you, Jason?
Basically, I'm winging it.
You know who Garrett is.
Yeah. No, I think, some of my favorite questions to answer on podcasts or when people come up to us after events.
What I like to do is you to think of a different question that you've never been asked. So if you were interviewing a mirror person of yourself, what sort of question would you ask and the reasons why you would ask that?
I would ask my favorite story, which no one's ever asked me on the podcast. I would ask, what's your favorite story in the book?
Okay, so what's your favorite story in the book?
My favorite story in the book is the couch cushion story. I think it really exemplifies, if people are only going to take one thing away from any conversation that Garrett and I are in, it's that story, what the meaning of that story.
Yeah.
So I'll say the story and then I'll shut up, Garrett, and I'll make it concise.
No.
So at this office that we were at, and we were running that identity access management, the software security, right? That whole revenue arm that we were talking about that got acquired by Google. That office was on Main Street in Santa Monica, and it was cool, like super cool, like old art gallery. But before that, like we put the sales team in a garage, like on Main Street, and we had this office, and it looked like it was out of a Restoration Hardware. like really cool. And there was this beautiful brown distressed leather couch in the office. And my number one salesperson storms in the office, closes the door, sits down on the couch. And she's like, we got a problem. And I'm like, what's the problem? And she's like, your rookie salesperson that you just hired is hoarding leads. And you don't ever want your number one salesperson being mad in general, let alone not over this, right? So I'm like, I will handle it. So I call the rookie into the office. He closes the door gently. He sits down on the same couch. And I'm like, hey, we got to talk. And he's like, what's going on? And as soon as I open my mouth, he starts going like this, rubbing his tuchus back and forth on this couch, that brown leather distressed couch. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he says, damn, this is a nice couch. And we all know salespeople are weird, right? Because we are salespeople. But this was really weird. And I'm like, okay, we got to talk about something. And he's like, sure, what's going on? As I open my mouth again, he goes, hold on. He stands up, puts his butt in my face, and starts flipping over the couch cushions on the couch, trying to find who made the couch. Flips the couch cushions back over, opens up his laptop like I'm not even in front of him, starts looking up the company, looks up at me. What? They have 6,000 employees. They must need identity access management and software security. Do you mind if I prospect into them after this call? I was like, no, it's fine. He puts the laptop over. He goes, okay, I'm really sorry. No more distractions. What did you want to talk? My appropriate response was absolutely nothing. You literally just found a deal in couch cushions, the same exact couch cushions that my former number one salesperson said there were no opportunities on. Like the greatest sellers on the planet are finding opportunities. Most people aren't looking, which ties back to what we were talking. It's the curiosity, it's the vigor, it's the asking questions that only you want to know the answers to. Like that guy, he would text me pictures of big rigs on the way to Vegas because he was in his early 20s and he partied way too hard. And he'd be like, 17,000 employees, Iowa, like emoji thumbs up. Like he would see deals that people didn't even know to look for. So that's my favorite story. And I think the ethos of what we saw when we had the privilege of interviewing some of the most successful people on the planet.
To jump in on that is, in challenging times, some people say the market's dead, we're going into recession, blah, 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 blah. And there's a self-dialogue that goes into their heads. Maybe because they're seeing all this stuff that's on the news and they're seeing all of the stuff, they start to believe it to themselves. And then if you believe in what's going on, your brain will find the answer. So if you stop with all of that rubbish and crap that's feeding your brain and just look for opportunities and look for something else that's going to motivate you. Brian Tracy thing that I listened to many years ago is listen to the radio and the news is chewing gum for the brain. And that always resonated with me because it's so true, because you're impacted all the time. Garrett, I'm going to ask you, backtrack again. I'm going to ask you that same question again. And I know
also on the subject of this, before we change the subject on this, one thing that AI is amazing at now is helping you flesh these types of things out and find these blind spots and these stories that you're telling yourself. So one thing I would recommend doing is pick your favorite ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it is you use and just ask it, hey, what are some stories I might be telling myself that are holding me back? Ask me some questions to figure it out and then help me create a plan to change those narratives. And it's amazing some of the conversations that you'll have if you think of a prompt like that. So as far as the question goes, look, you've spent a little over 30 minutes with Colin and I now. So I assume the obvious question is, how do I deal with having a partner like this, working with him all day, every day?
Well, that's a great question. Yes.
But I do really like when people ask us questions outside of the realm of the book and about our partnership and that sort of thing, and our relationship as co-authors and professors and the things that we do together. So I think the question I would ask, look at this. Yeah, you know where I'm going. So I think the question I would ask is what is it about your partnership that makes all of this work? Because we're really lucky since joining forces. You know, we built this sales team and ended up selling the company to Google. And then, you know, without any sort of teaching experience, we've got this amazingly successful class at USC that we're in the 17th semester teaching now. And that led to the book deal and the stages that we get to speak on and all of these things. And so I think the way I would answer that question is that Colin and I'll speak on both behalves, but we complement each other in really interesting ways. Like, we obviously look different and we have different personalities and we have different takes even on the subjects that we speak about and teach about, but we ultimately meet in the middle at the same conclusion. And it's because we legitimately are best friends in real life.
Mhm.
And we legitimately want what's best for each other individually and as partners. And I think that, when we get in front of audiences, whether it's people reading the book or people seeing us on stages, they see themselves in one of us, or most likely in between the two of us. And that sort of complementary relationship is a huge part of the success that we've been lucky enough to have, and that I hope we will continue to have for many, many, many years to come.
Awesome. Which leads me into the segue. How can people find out more about you?
We are pretty easy to find. So, colinandgarrett.com, as you can see on the screen there, if you're watching and not listening. Otherwise, we're easy to find on LinkedIn, Garrett Brown, Colin Coggins, and we are more than happy to answer questions if any come up in this conversation, or if you have things you want to help with. And then the book is The Unsold Mindset, available wherever you buy your books, Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Audible. Pick your
Your
poison.
local-
Spotify. I heard it on. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
been
if you listen to the Audible, you hear both of us.
Yeah, and I did. I heard both of you talking. And what I did love, and this is for people to listen and also to share a golden nugget forward, I really like the perspective on it. And it was different to some of the other stuff that I heard or read in the past. So if you want something slightly different and to make you think and to do something which you already have the tools inside of you, only when you reach in and find what works for you. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've always learned, but I loved the take that you both put onto the book, which is incredible. So I thank you both for being on the Global Sales Leader podcast. You can listen on all of the channels and YouTube and Spotify and iTunes and all of the other things that are out there. And I love these kind of conversations because it's sharing insightful things that can help other people learn and grow. So I thank you both for this.
Great to be
Jason.
here. You're awesome. This was so much fun.